There's a moment you love and never rush, the breath between her last sentence and your first touch. You keep it intact, like a dome over a candle. It is in that breath that consent acquires a body and desire gets its bearings. When you do touch, it is a warm palm placed not to claim, but to confirm what the air already knew. The movement is measured, fluent, confident enough to be gentle. She answers with that unconcealed softness the mouth was practicing for the last several minutes. Her lower lip becomes an amen. The heat is sweeter because it was not demanded. It was prepared. Your stillness travels. On a late train where fluorescent lights make everyone look a little haunted, you stand with a balance that reads like mercy. You don't widen your stance to own space. You adjust to create it. Your hand rises, not to display yourself, but to stabilize the strap for someone shorter. The car registers the gesture and quiets, not silence, a hush. She is 2 seats away, and the perimeter around you changes her posture too. Her spine stops negotiating with the day. Her jaw unclenches. The tongue, no longer braced, smooths its way against the back of her teeth, and the mouth grows fluid with the uncomplicated luxury of feeling safe near a man who knows how to be still without disappearing. At dinner, the food arrives hot, but you are the temperature that makes it taste like itself. You do not rush bites between sentences or perform opinions at the cost of flavor. You cut steadily, you chew thoroughly, you pause to actually taste. She catches your rhythm and falls into it like a song she forgot she loved. Her fork slows. Her stories deepen. The room's clatter recedes. When she laughs, it is lower than usual, a chest sound that leaves a sheen at the corners of her mouth, the way butter leaves evidence on a plate. She dabs once with a napkin and then decides, wisely, not to keep hiding the proof that pleasure is working. Conflict arrives, as it must for any life worth living, and your stillness refuses its favorite script. You don't lace your voice with threat or put your empathy on stilts. You name what is true, proportionate, and let quiet carry the point. When her voice speeds, you do not chase it. You hold the door of the moment open until it can walk through at human stride. The argument loses its drama and keeps its dignity. The aftertaste is not ash. It is something like tea with honey, warm and corrective. Later, when she tells the story to herself before sleep, the mouth doesn't rehearse bitter comebacks. It relaxes into the relief of being with a man whose calm makes repair probable. Your stillness has playfulness in it, which is why it never calcifies into control. You can lock eyes across a room and turn the silence between you into a barefoot sprint through a field, mischief under restraint, laughter without noise. In that look, her mouth prepares for a smile that may not come yet but is inevitable, and the gloss returns like a tide. You give nothing away too quickly. The delayed grin is its own language, one she has learned to read with her whole body. It says soon. It says we aren't wasting this with haste. It says you can want this safely. When storms hit actual weather, you don't narrate capability. You let the rain use you. You angle the umbrella so the wind learns manners. You time the run to the car for the interval between tantrums. You drive at a pace that keeps traction and dignity. Your hands steady on the wheel, voice easy, eyes sure. The cabin of that car becomes a sanctuary because you refuse to audition for heroism. Her mouth responds with the same old truth, an unplanned warmth at the edge that has nothing to do with perfume and everything to do with relief. Even water tastes better in your stillness. Later, on a porch where summer is reluctant to say goodnight, your quiet invites the crickets to play lead. You don't push conversation into profundity, but you don't let it coast either. You tend the flame with questions that matter and silences that protect. When she rests her head on your shoulder, it is not a collapse. It is placement. The mouth loses all need to pose. It simply rests parted, the way lips do when sleep is considering them. You notice, not to possess, but to bless the small miracle that a body can be this unguarded near yours and be more itself, not less. This is the secret of why the sight of you pulls a bright response from her mouth every time. Your stillness sweetens heat. It lowers the world to a temperature where honesty caramelizes and leaves gloss that doesn't ask to be wiped away. The body tells the truth when it is safe. With you, the truth arrives tasting like the future, and she swallows it gladly. Laughter is a solvent, and yours is formulated with care. You never pour it on to strip paint. You warm it gently until what's brittle can let go without losing shape. Most jokes travel with hidden teeth. Yours arrive buttered. They make room rather than take it. She discovers this the first time you rescue a tense circle with a line that refuses to spend anyone's dignity. Heads tilt back, shoulders fall, the air stops flinching. Her mouth answers before her mind can draft a review. Open, bright, unashamed. The sound that comes out lives low, where afternoons become evenings and appetite remembers itself. She feels the quick gloss gather at the edges of her lips, that bright proof of system relieved of duty and restored to delight. Your humor begins with attention. You don't default to the loudest target or the cheapest angle. You watch for what the moment can actually bear. A friend fumbles an anecdote, and you catch it without stealing it, giving the laugh back to the teller, as if laughter were a ball and not a trophy. A stranger tries too hard, and you acknowledge the effort instead of prosecuting the misfire. You make a joke about the way the overhead lights flatter no one, including yourself, and the room stops competing with itself long enough to remember that human is the point. She tastes kindness in the flavor of the laugh. It is the kind that lingers without coating the tongue. The mouth stays open a second longer than propriety requires, because propriety has nothing useful to do when joy is honest. You are fluent in the dial rather than the switch. Some moments need a grin that leans, some need a smile she feels in her ribs, some need that surprised exhale that means a weight just left the building. You read the gauges. In a line that refuses to move, you invent a tiny story about the register being unionized and on a mandated coffee break, and the person in front of you who looked ready to declare war on the world chuckles into the collar of their coat. She watches you do this again and again, translate impatience into amusement, translate embarrassment into camaraderie, translate silence into connection, and wonders how long it has been since she let laughter edit her day's rough draft. Your jokes never cannibalize the person who laughs at them. This is rarer than most admit. You learned early that humor purchased with someone else's dignity sends a bill later. So you keep the receipts clean. When she trips over a word, you salute the new vocabulary as if the language had simply expanded to keep up with her. When you misread a sign and head through the wrong door, you bow to the committee of mops and declare yourself promoted to facilities liaison. The gag is always about a circumstance, never a soul. The effect on her body is measurable. The little clutch at the back of the throat that usually prepares for humiliation unhooks itself and wanders off. The mouth, sensing safe terrain, offers more of itself to the shape of the moment. Laughter leaves shine. You let it. You keep a private theater where inside jokes get season tickets. They are not weapons used to exclude. They are blankets used to include. A phrase from a road trip becomes a ritual that can turn a Tuesday into a conspirator. A misheard lyric turns into a kitchen dance that rescues oversalted pasta. A pigeon with improbable swagger becomes a legend who shows up at every park. These strands bind without binding. She finds herself half smiling during a meeting because a spreadsheet column aligns in a way that resurrects your running bit about cells with delusions of grandeur. And the smile does what smiles do. The mouth warms, the eyes soften, and the body stops bracing for no reason at all. It is difficult to overstate how erotic safety can be when it is this deftly engineered. The laugh you carry lives where bread rises. It's not the sharp titter of someone trying to be clever. It's the low, generous sound of a chest that knows work and knows play and refuses to make enemies of them. When it arrives, it invites other laughter to match its octave. She doesn't have to pitch her joy higher than it wants to go. She can ride the note you set, and in doing so find out that her own voice has warmth she'd forgotten. Afterwards, she touches the corner of her mouth and feels the faint, clean residue of having been happy without performance. If she licks it away, it is not to hide, it is to savor. In hard places, your humor travels with respect. A hospital waiting room is not a stage, but it can be a kitchen if the right ingredients arrive. You don't crack jokes to distract, you cook small comforts. A line about the machine that likes to sing when it's nervous yields a smile from a technician who hasn't had one all shift. You pretend to interview the terrible coffee for its resume, and the receptionist laughs into her sleeve. She watches you do this and understands why your jokes are not merely entertaining. They are a civic service. The mouth's response, hers, theirs, confirms it each time. A swallow, a small brightness, a tiny pooling of courage at the lip line. Humor can be hydration. Yours is. Flirtation under your care becomes a language with better manners than most of its speakers. You don't pounce, you play. A look becomes a sentence, a smile becomes punctuation, a raised eyebrow becomes italics. When you finally deliver a line designed specifically for her, something about the way she edits a room simply by entering it, something about the conviction with which she orders dessert as if joy needs no permission, it lands like a spoon tapping the side of a glass to call a toast. She laughs in the lower register, the one reserved for truths that make the body a little liquid, and the edges of her lips gleam. There is no confusion about why. Delight thawed what worry had frozen. What melts shines. You are as willing to be the butt of your own joke as you are to be its conductor, and that equity keeps the room honest. You talk about the time you tried to fix a leaky sink and nearly invented a fountain in your own kitchen, and the telling carries none of the apology of a man trying to win points with humility. It carries the confidence of someone who understands that competence and comedy can share a house. She doesn't have to pretend to be less to laugh with you. She gets to be more. The mouth admires this without needing a manifesto. It simply adds a little light to its edges and keeps returning to the curve that laughter taught it. Your humor has a rule you never announce. Punchlines should leave people larger. You bring that rule into every room, and rooms start to get addictive. People wonder why a lineup of simple errands feels good when you're around. It's because you keep turning minor frictions into private epics that end in grace. The grocery store's announcement about avocados becomes news from the Ministry of Green Affairs. The elevator's stubborn pause between floors becomes a dramatic intermission. The dog tied outside the cafe is promoted to public morale officer and granted a commendation for tail service. She watches you knight the ordinary, and the day tastes better for everyone. When an evening is winding down, you know the difference between one last joke and the right last joke. You choose the one that lands like the gentlest closing of a good book. It gathers what has been shared, honors what should remain unsaid, and leaves warmth where people will find it later. She will find it brushing her teeth, catching herself grinning with foam on her lip because you said one perfect sentence about how the streetlights tonight look like they finally agreed to be stars. She will rinse, swallow, and keep the smile. The mouth loves what it gets to keep. And on mornings when nothing is wrong and everything is ordinary, you don't force a bit to justify your place in the day. You let the sun do the opening monologue. You pour coffee with the solemnity of a priest who knows this sacrament matters, and when the mug is in her hand, you lean on the counter and offer a single line that makes the kitchen warmer than the appliance ever could. It's not brilliant, it's true. That's the secret you never say aloud. Humor that melts edges is simply truth told at a temperature people can hold. Her laugh proves it. So does the subtle sheen at the corners of her mouth that arrives every time you enter the room, carrying a smile that knows how to feed without devouring. Your kindness does not arrive with banners. It enters a room like good light, unannounced, instantly useful, changing the way everything else is seen. The first evidence is often small and almost invisible to anyone who isn't paying attention. The chair nudged into a friendlier angle, the glass of water set down before anyone remembers they're thirsty, the door held a heartbeat longer than courtesy requires because you noticed the bag on her shoulder and the weight in her eyes. You are not auditioning for sainthood. You are practicing a craft that most people only believe in when they are young and then forget. The relief of being considered. She feels it first where truth always announces itself. In the body, the jaw unclenches because it has found a place where it won't be cross-examined. The shoulders drop their borrowed armor. The breath lengthens until the lungs remember their full names. The mouth warms at the edges, that unstageable signal that reception has replaced defense. And there it is, a small, honest swell of desire that has nothing to hide because it has nothing to fear. This is the alchemy you keep repeating without spectacle. You make a space where thirst can admit itself without shame, and in that admission, it becomes beautiful. Your kindness is detailed, not dramatic. You remember names and use them like keys that open doors no one else can find. You listen past the headline of a day to the footnote where the human is hiding. You answer texts in the cadence you promised to, not because digital piety impresses you, but because time is a moral thing in your hands, and punctuality is how you say my word keeps shelter. She tastes the difference. Attention that costs you nothing tastes like sugar and vanishes. Attention that costs you care tastes like salt, and she will remember it hours later and swallow again with gratitude. You are generous in ways that do not require you to announce your generosity. The meal you cook arrives plated but not performed. The favor you do never carries an invoice. The advice you give is a question with better grammar. The apology you offer is a verb, not theater. When you cover a bill, it is because the evening will be cheaper tomorrow if you honor it today. When you step between nonsense and someone who doesn't deserve to pay for it, you do so with the kind of clarity that ends an argument instead of relocating it. Kindness like this calibrates a room. Voices remember their inside settings. Eyes stop scanning for exits. Appetite stops bargaining and simply stands up. With strangers, you are democratic, which is to say you act like everyone lives in the same country. The server who has already endured 7 comedians before reaching your table receives your best politeness without having to earn it. The courier gets the easy entrance and the thank you with his name attached like a ribbon. The kid holding 2 ice creams and a problem with gravity gets your hand under the cone before disaster can learn to call itself destiny. You do not do these things because someone is watching. You do them because someone is living. She watches anyway, and the mouth answers with the ancient reflex stored in our oldest stories. When shelter is near, we allow ourselves to hunger. When you speak to her, you make admiration specific. You don't say beautiful and leave it to work overtime. You name the angle of courage inside a choice, the way her patience has teeth, the exact note her laugh hits when it refuses to spend anyone's dignity. Compliments like that are not flares, they are hearths. They warm without burning. They make room for more life to gather. She draws a little nearer without negotiating the motion with anyone but her own body. The edges of her lips shine because safety makes the mouth honest. She doesn't wipe it away. She would, years ago, not now. Your kindness knows how to stay when staying is inconvenient. Crisis never sends you a calendar invite. It texts at midnight and rings on mornings meant to be quiet. You don't arrive with solutions strapped to your chest like medals. You arrive with coffee, clarity, and the willingness to do the boring parts of rescue. You will sit in waiting rooms that turn minutes into something cruel and make them human again. You will make calls that redistribute pressure. You will be the one who remembers to eat and to feed. She will not romanticize you for this. She will trust you for it. Trust is not a bouquet, it's bread. Desire and kindness learn each other's language in your presence. When you reach for her hand, it is not after a performance of niceness expecting to be paid. You ask as if touch were a conversation and not a conquest. If the answer is yes, your palm remains human, warm, deliberate, unhurried. If the answer is no, your posture remains the same, warm, deliberate, unhurried. This is the part that makes a body tell the truth. Thirst becomes honest not because it is ungoverned, but because it is unpunished. She will want you here, openly, with lips that do not need to pretend they are not preparing. She will want you even when you are not here, because the kindness you left in the room keeps tasting like the future. At work, you do something unfashionable and irresistible. You keep promises that are small. The email you said you'd send by noon arrives with a margin to spare. The follow-up you volunteered lands before she had to spend respect asking for it. You do not delegate apology to time. You make the call. People begin to speak differently around you. She hears it. The absence of hedging, the presence of verbs that mean something, the way laughter has stopped checking over its shoulder. The taste of this is subtle and cumulative, like the right amount of salt in a stew. You don't notice the seasoning. You only notice when it's missing. She notices that around you it's never missing. There is a way you decline that. It is a better kindness than false yes. You say no without making anyone pay for asking. You say later with a date and not a mirage. You say I can't with the name of the person who can, and then you introduce them. Boundaries like this are not fences, they are trail markers. People stop getting lost. She sees you tell the truth in the exact moment when courtesy would find it convenient to lie, and the swallow happens again, deeper this time. Honesty is an aphrodisiac in a world that sells ambiguity as sophistication. You remember what people love, and you conspire for it. The pastry she thought out loud about 3 weeks ago appears on a morning designed by weather to be endured, and suddenly, the day becomes a handshake between endurance and pleasure. The album her friend mentioned floats in your next conversation like you took notes and then took joy seriously. The place her grandmother liked to sit in the park becomes the place you suggest, exactly at the hour the light makes benches look like they're telling the truth. You are not collecting points. You are building a world where people feel witnessed into being larger. In that world, thirst is honest because it is for more life, not more leverage. Your kindness ages well. Early on, it looks like the door you hold and the coat you remember. Later, it looks like the fight you de-escalate without winning and the dream you adjust without extinguishing. It becomes a habit that seasons a house. The lamp you switch off. The dish you wash while telling a story that keeps both of you company. The garden you water even when the sky threatens to do the job badly. She tastes this future the way a baker tastes dough to know whether it will rise. The mouth answers with warmth because continuity has a flavor and your presence keeps serving it. This is why women want you near and do not have to ration their wanting. Kindness in your hands is not a costume for the first hour. It is the infrastructure of the 1000th. It does not promise that life will never be dry. It promises a well. So when she looks up and sees you, at a door, in a crowd across a day, and feels that immediate heat along the line where words become touch, she is not embarrassed by it. Let the unobservant call it drool. She knows better. She is tasting the place where safety and desire have agreed to meet. She is tasting you. Leaving is the last sentence, and you are the man who believes last sentences matter. They do not beg, they bless. They do not cling, they clarify. The first time she notices your exit is not when you are gone, but when you begin to go. You gather without scraping, you thank without theater, you make eye contact with the people who made the evening passable and the people who made it excellent. And then you turn toward the door without inviting the room to audition for your absence. She registers the craftsmanship of it in a place words rarely visit. The body recognizes a door closed well. Air doesn't rush, light doesn't leak, warmth stays where it belongs. You do not disappear. You depart. There is a difference. Disappearance is a trick that tries to turn scarcity into charm. Departure is a promise that has learned how to keep time. With her, you close the distance one small, honest step at a time. You don't telegraph an embrace and then downgrade it to a wave. You don't start a sentence you won't deliver. You give a look that recaps the evening in a glance, and then, if touch belongs, you place it exactly where the hour can bear it, palm to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, a kiss that keeps its vows. The kiss, when it's that, is not an exclamation point. It's punctuation you studied and chose on purpose. It leaves a sentence in the mouth that will finish itself in the walk home. She tastes it every few steps and smiles because good flavor does not require constant attention. It simply remains. There is kindness in the tools of your exit. You do not leave your coat draped over someone else's evening. You do not deposit plates in the sink like IOUs for the morning. You check the window for rain and name it before it ambushes. You ask if anyone needs a ride and mean the ride, not the credit. Your leave-taking carries no mess for someone else to parent. She experiences this not as tidiness, but as respect. Respect, when it is this thorough, is an aphrodisiac that announces itself in the place it always does, behind the lips, where warmth gathers as if to say the future just got easier. On sidewalks, you do not let departure turn into performance. You don't walk backward as if nostalgia were a sport. You don't rush as if the next thing could erase this one. You match her pace, and in that matching, the last minutes grow rich. Words come that didn't have room at a table. Jokes land that were too shy in a crowd. The quiet between sentences becomes the good kind, the kind that tastes like rest earned. not like conversation failed. At the corner, you calibrate, invite, conclude. If there is a next time already scheduled, you say it plain. If there isn't, you leave a path a grown person can walk. The mouth answers with the little gloss that means consent and not confusion. Wanting trusts itself when you exit clean. Distance is part of the ritual you keep sacred. A door closes behind you and the room doesn't slump. It keeps its shape because you did not take your shape with you like a thief. Your scent lingers honestly. Cedar, patience, the last laugh of the night. And it's not a ghost, it's a forecast. She inhales at the sink while rinsing 2 glasses and recognizes the moment for what it is, the aftertaste of something good. She does not chase it around the house. She lets it do its work while she does hers. The swallow comes, unhurried, and she smiles at the way the body votes, even when the mind is off duty. You text like a man who knows the difference between echo and presence. The message lands when it should, neither a demand for applause nor an audition for mystery. Home safe has become its own sacrament, small and consistent, building a cathedral of trust 1 brick at a time. Thank you for tonight arrives early enough to feel like a continuation, not a verdict. Sleep well is a benediction, not a seduction disguised as poetry. She reads, sets the phone down face first, because she wants to keep the tone of the room, and wanders to the mirror. The mouth is still warm at the edges, the look on her face not conquest, not scarcity, simply the pleased fatigue of a day that ended like a story should. On the evenings when you have to leave early, you do not conscript others into resenting your responsibilities. You name the reason without treating duty like a drum. You make the goodbye more graceful to compensate for the brevity. She watches you put your hand on a friend's shoulder, the exact length of human connection, and then hers in the way that says, there is more, later. And the body believes it, because your later has a record of arriving on time. What remains in the room after you go is not vacuum, it is outline. People fall into better shapes. There is a leaving you practice that almost no one sees. It happens after conflict that refused escalation because you refused to feed it. You go, not in a huff, not in self-congratulation, but in quiet, to give the moment what it needs to cool from simmer to warm. You send the sentence that puts tomorrow back on the calendar. You sleep like a man who knows that clean exits keep doors from rotting. She wakes, finds your message, tastes relief before coffee, and the swallow it takes to get from bed to morning is easy. That ease is a flavor you left behind on purpose. When travel is the kind of leaving you must do, you pack the house with small continuities. A note in a drawer that will be opened for reasons that have nothing to do with you. A playlist that begins with her favorites and ends with a track she will love the moment it begins. A plant watered with the patience you practice on everything living. You don't turn absence into theater. You turn it into hospitality for the days you won't be inside. She notices in the first lonely hour that the loneliness is not a verdict, it is a horizon. She stands at the sink, drinks water, and tastes you in the way the glass cools her mouth. The heat that gathers there is not ache, it is appetite that trusts the kitchen will remain stocked. You are as careful with returns as you are with exits. Re-entry is a kind of leaving in reverse, and you do not allow it to be a crash. You knock, even on doors that belong to you, because knocking is the sound love makes when it remembers that people are not rooms. You arrive with the same pace you left with, and the 2 lines meet without drama. She opens, the house exhales, and the flavor in the air confirms what the body already knew all week. Goodbyes that respect tomorrow turn into hellos that don't have to apologize. The last moments of an evening are always the part you polish. Even when you are nowhere near grand romance, you let decency wear a tuxedo. You thank the host in words that mention a specific grace. You return a borrowed book promptly and in better condition. You send the picture everyone forgot to take. You leave a place in a state that makes the next gathering easier to begin. The result is cumulative. People start timing their nights by your presence. She finds herself leaving 10 minutes after you do, because staying would feel like keeping a light on that has already said good night. As she locks her own door, she touches her lower lip without meaning to. The body likes to check its records. Everything is in order. So when you step back into the city and let the door hush behind you, You know exactly what you are doing. You have seasoned the room one last time. You have given the air a note it can hold without effort. You have left a flavor that does not beg to be chased. It invites a return. She turns off the lamp, sets her glass where it belongs, and walks towards sleep with the taste of you still bright and certain at the edge of her mouth. Call it longing if you want. Call it a promise if you're honest. It is the thing clean exits leave behind, a future that already has a palate. Your eyes are patient heat. They don't interrogate, they marinate. When she speaks, you let the gaze rest long enough to catch the subtle flavors. How conviction rises when she talks about work that matters. How mischief lights the room when she remembers a childhood rebellion. How grief softens the pitch and invites a slower reply. Your replies respect those temperatures. You don't cool what needs to simmer. You don't crank a boil under what asks for low and slow. She tastes your listening as surely as she tastes the wine.